That was Geoff Allardyce, the acting CEO of the ICC, and who knows, maybe soon the permanent CEO of the ICC. Who knows? Who knows? But the important thing is that we know the format. We've got an idea of the structure. Now we've just got to get an Olympic committee to agree to let it in. But it will be T20 cricket. It won't be, some of the more hilarious suggestions that we've heard over the last few years.
Yeah, that's right. So a couple of things to take from that. First of all, Geoff Allardyce wants to join the final word for that longer conversation. So looking forward to getting the chance to sort of do the big State of the Nation chat with him. Maybe when he's the appointed full-time chief exec, let's hope that's the case, because you can see that, or you can hear even through that interview, that he's a guy who wants to shake things up and reform the game, which can only be a good thing. And yes, when it comes to the format of what would be an Olympic Games, the IOC are pretty clear that you need to have an existing international world championship infrastructure, and T20 has that. So, I mean, Joe Root was asked a question in his press conference today about, what about the 100? A breathless sort of question. What about the 100 for the Olympic Games? And Joe, I mean, who obviously hasn't been briefed, and nor should he be briefed, by the way, he's got a test match to play in a couple of days, goes, sure, it makes sense if we're going to have an Olympic Games, and the 100 might be a good format. Well, here's the thing. I reckon we need to sort of help with the misinformation here. It's not going to be T10, no matter how often it's written in the paper. It's not going to be the 100. It's not going to be beach cricket, as was put years ago. It's not going to be indoor cricket. It's going to be T20 cricket. We need to sing off the same song sheet as a sport. We need to be unified for once and help make sure that we're all, bringing our collective effort at trying to get this over the line. What we don't want to look like is a rabble and disorganised and squabbling amongst ourselves. So whether you like it or not, it's going to be T20 cricket. Kind of get with the program.
You know what would be handy is if, say, a T20 match didn't take 4.5 hours to get through. That would be pretty useful for an Olympics. Imagine if they could, get through one in 3 hours like was originally supposed to be the case.
Well, I mean, I suppose they will, won't they? Because we see, I haven't got this to hand, the stat, but isn't it the case that baseball at the Olympics and basketball at the Olympics are played in far narrower windows, and not just because of the length of the game, but they just, it culturally takes a shorter span of time. So, and I'm sure that by the time we get to 2028, Geoff, we would have fixed the overrate problem per our discussion on the show a few weeks ago. So that'll be all in the rear vision mirror.
Well, okay, we can only hope. I think it's the time on the show where we play a little game. You want to play a game?
I do indeed.
All right. It's late at night here, so I'm just going to say this. Sotto voce. We're going to play a game called Nerd Pledge. Nerd Pledge. It's the reverse quiz. It's the game we play with people on our Patreon page. They help us make the show because we make the show twice a week. And so they're the people who support us doing it. They send us a contribution. It's an amount of currency of their choice. It's not a normal amount. It's not a round number. It's a very specific number because the number relates to cricket in some way, and we have to work out what the number means. For instance, our nerd pleasure for this show is Xavier Bochat or Javier Bochat, depending how you want to do it. His number is $12.90, 1290. And Xavier has sent through a clue as well, which you don't have to do, but he has, saying, I donated $12.90 because it had to be over $3 and I couldn't do $1.29. Good luck. Can't wait to hear it. This is possibly the greatest podcast segment in the history of podcasts. So not only has Xavier chipped in with a very generous $12.90, he's also given us a very generous compliment. So we love Xavier already. $12.90 is the clue, but it's $1.29. What have you made of $1.29, Adam Collins?
Yeah, well, thank you, Xavier. That's really nice of you to say, and really kind of you to send that much money through. And I thought that well, 129. Let's find the best possible, the greatest example of 129, given the nature of the sentence he sent through, and that has to be the great Sydney Barnes, who was cap number 129 for England. Now, we've talked about his 189 Test wickets in some depth in the past.
Yes, exhaustive detail. I think we talked about them one by one. I reckon we went through from 1 to 189.
There's a little bit of that. I mean, they came at 16 in 27 Test matches between 1901 and 1904. His extreme late swing, how he was the quickest bowler going around in his pomp. Then he kind of turned into this canny seamer later on in the piece. But
he always said he was a spinner. He always argued he was a spin bowler. That was
fast spinner.
Yeah. his insistence through his whole career was that he spun the ball. Don't call him a seamer. He didn't like being called a seamer. He'll come back and haunt you if you call him a seamer. And the other thing that's always confusing is there was also a batsman called Sydney Barnes who played for Australia, and so that used to fuck me up endlessly. I'd be like, wait, hang on, he's playing for Australia now and he's making runs, and I got confused so many times when I was first doing some cricket history. But they're two different people. I hope that's helpful.
They very much are two different people. They did very different things. But yeah, so I mean, I quite like the journey of him sort of being cap 129 and either side of him receiving his first cap. How it all starts for him is he's a pro in the Lancashire League. That's what he did. I mean, he wasn't playing first-class cricket. He was proing. And Archie McLaren wanted to see him and have a look before he took his team out to Australia in 1901, 1902. So he dragged him down to Old Trafford
Celebrity
for a net.
racist Archie McLaren.
He dragged him down for a net. And in the nets, Barnes smashes him on the thigh, goes up to apologise to sort of the England captain, who says, no need to apologise. You're on the boat. You're coming. So he gets on the tour on the back of that. Takes 5 for 65 from 35.1 overs on debut, and then 13 wickets in a losing effort in the second Test match. And then they lose the series 4-1. So the correlation there is, as soon as Barnes is injured, the arse falls out. And Australia thrashed them. He got asked to bowl 80 overs in the second Test match, which might have contributed to why his own thigh was cooked at the end of that second Test. But then he kind of disappears for 5 years. And this is. This has been written about in great depth by a lot of authors over the years. But from 1902 till kind of 1907, he's just not really about. I mean, he does play in 1902, sorry. He plays in that Sheffield Test match, the one at Bramall Lane, the one-off Test match there, and takes wickets there, takes 6 for. Then they don't play him the next week at Manchester, which, of course, Australia win the Ashes by like 3 runs or something like that. And then he kind of goes, no, you know what?
What was
you
he
don't
doing?
pick me for that Test match. Yeah, this is it. I don't really know why he wasn't picked, but he wasn't.
No, but what was he doing for the 5 years? Was it like a gap year, or like did he have a touch of the Wally Hammonds? Or
No. The extra. Well, this is the thing. He didn't play much first-class cricket. So you look at his overall numbers. He's taken 189 Test wickets, but only 226 when playing for his county. Principally, he was just off playing in the leagues because he preferred to be a pro. The rhythm of the 8 days a week nature of first class cricket did not suit him. So instead, he played on Saturdays for Staffordshire and just did his thing.
So would he have been paid as a county player had he been playing?
No. Well, they might. I mean, I suppose. I mean, I don't know how much they would have been paid in that era, but the rhythms of playing just on Saturdays were more in keeping. And he was probably. And I know this much. He was earning a lot more for playing for Staffordshire than he would have been sort of playing first class cricket. So, so he misses the 1903-04 Ashes trip. He misses the 1905 Ashes at home as well. And he finally comes back to the whole thing in 1907. 08, a tour where he actually gets Trumper out 3 times for a duck in consecutive matches. So he's back, back in the groove pretty much straight away. And then his piece of resistance is the tour of 1911-12 when Johnny won't hit today. He didn't give him the new ball at Sydney, and he kind of sulked off and bowled sort of 30 overs, cracking the shits. And then in response to that, he took 3 5-wicket bags in a row. England win the tour 4-1. It's his finest hour as an England bowler, nearly matched by the 49 wickets he took at 11 against South Africa that we've talked about before. But it's winning an Ashes on his own.
That was a busted ass South African team playing on matting on
mats. That's right.
Matting wickets, and that's the series. He's still top of the pops for the most wickets in a series, but he also cracked the shits at one point on that tour and refused to play a Test match. So he played 4 tests and took 49, but could have played a 5th test and taken another 16 or whatever.
Yeah, and there's a classic example of what he was able to do at Staffordshire. So he took 14 wickets for 13 runs in a game against Cheshire in 1909, which is just preposterous. And then against Northumberland, he took 16 in a day, in one day against them. I think that's a little bit later on.
With a follow-on, was it?
Yeah, I assume that must have been a follow-on. And he took 14 for 29 against an Indian touring team in 1911. So you get a sense for the extent to which he dominated at that level below in the minor counties. He ended up, living to a very long age. He kept playing cricket until his mid-50s. In 1928, I think it was, against the touring West Indian team. In his mid-50s, they still thought he was the most damaging bowler they faced on the whole tour. Like, he could have still played Test cricket some 14 years after his previous Test match. And he was still. There's a story that he still attended Lords in his 95th year in 1967, just before he died. He came to Lords and he brought a blind Wilfred Rhodes around with him, his old mate who he played with for so long earlier in his career. And in the case of Barnes, he passed away in 1967, aged 94, and Rhodes died 6 years later, having made it to 95. So both lived long lives and still loved cricket all the way to the end. So going through those numbers again, for Staffordshire, he took 1,441 wickets at 8.15. So, then they're non-professional games. County cricket, just 226 wickets. Other first-class matches, so not playing county cricket, not playing Test cricket. So presumably that's a combination of tour games, MCC games, that kind of thing. He took 304 wickets. And other league games and club games across the span of cricket that he was turning out for, an additional 4,069 wickets at 6.03 to make a tally of Test, County, First Class, Staffordshire, League and Club of 6,229 wickets at an average of 8.33. But for the purpose of our pledge today, he was cap 129 or 1290 for Javier Borchardt.
That's beautiful. 6,200 wickets. You'd be weary after that. And also when he showed up with Wilfred Rhodes when they were both 90, probably if he'd showed up to a Brian Close 11, he would have got a game, and it would have been another first class stat. No worries.
He would have taken. Yeah, he might have got a test and taken 11 in the game to get to join the 200 club to be the first bowler into that.
Xavier, because of your excellent number, you get to give away a slab of Brick Lane, the finest beer going around the Brick Lane brewing community. It might be the One Love Pale Ale. It might be the Someday Sour. It might be the Backyarder Crisp Lager. I don't know. Who knows what's coming your way? Maybe you can choose. I'm not sure how this whole process works. I'm just the guy on the show. But Brick Lane make delicious beer, and we can send a case of it to anywhere in Australia. So if you want to have that yourself and you're in Australia, you can. If you're not in Australia, you can send it to someone who is, and they will love you for it. It will be a beautiful thing that you can do for an Australian. And who doesn't want to do a nice thing for an Australian once in a while? So that information will be winging its way to you, Xavier, after this show.
So all of the Brick Lane details are in the show notes, the website, the social media handles as well. I've loved seeing so many of your photos, be it on Twitter or Instagram or on the Discord channel as well, which has been going great guns. Actually, Geoff, left Discord for a couple of days when I was under the pump last week, calling the first Test match, and returned to it with hundreds and hundreds of messages in there. So that's all part of it with what we're doing at the moment on the Patreon page. You can join that, patreon.com/the final word. It'll mean after you put an Nerd Pledge in, you have every chance to pick up a slab from Brick Lane, or at least have the chance to on-send a slab to someone that you like in Australia, which isn't always an easy thing for people that live in the UK. But I'm sure there is someone.
There's got to be someone
who you like.
There should be at least one Australian that you like.
And here's the thing: we like Brick Lane because they're supporting the show, helping us do what we do, and we're proud to be in association with them. Check out what they do, as I say. Join them on social media and look them up on the website and buy yourself some beer on the weekend if that's your thing.
Right, from Nerd Pledge to England and India and the Test match and the result that wasn't. Deeply, deeply frustrating that fifth day when, any rain-off is annoying, but when you get a rain-off when you've got an absolute corker set up, the number of people who are saying India will walk this in, I don't think it was going to be that easy on the last day. 150 plus, 9 wickets in hand, but it only takes one to start things off. You lose a couple quickly and suddenly we've seen how difficult it can be. We saw the way that both sides in the World Test Championship final struggled to get anywhere near innings of 200 runs. We've seen how difficult it can be in England, particularly where scores of 180, 190 can be pretty challenging. It could have been an all-time classic last day. We'll never know.
Yeah, I completely agree. For those who are saying that India are going to walk it, they haven't been following, as you say, Test cricket in England in recent times. And look, that's the benefit you get for winning the toss and batting in challenging conditions on the first morning. So, runs on the board, it does have an effect when you get to the back of a test match, which is going to be won or lost on the final day when chasing a modest tally. And still, I mean, the victory target of whatever it was, 209, wasn't huge, but it had a two in front of it. England did have a wicket overnight. And they have some very experienced bowlers, especially on the final day. So I thought it was game on. So my frustration again, and I'm sure it was yours as well, Geoff, returns to a favourite topic of ours of how do we find a way to keep playing cricket in England when it's raining. And just to say one thing on this, I saw some quite extreme tweets about this saying, well, it's going to cost £500 million to put a roof up. We're not talking about putting a roof up. We've really stopped talking about putting a roof up because all of the smart people that, Geoff, you and I have corresponded with on the Guardian live blog in the last, 2, 3, 4 years, whenever this comes up, maybe even longer now, they all say the same thing. You fix it, not with a roof, but with drones. What you need to get is some drones set up and holding up a big sheet over the ground in sort of a hot air balloon style formation, which apparently is not that hard to do. I mean, it's not easy to do either, but it's not. This isn't like putting man on the moon again. It's much more straightforward than trying to retrofit roofs over cricket grounds. So yeah, it feels like. I mean, this might sound mental. This is the first thing I'm talking about here, but. We're going to have more days of cricket rained off into the future. We know that. We have talked to experts on climate change on this program before. If we want to see Test cricket overcome that challenge, I mean, obviously the better way would to be for our game and our planet to reduce its carbon footprint, I'm sure. But like in the short term, in this transition phase, when there is more rain about, surely we need to find some way to keep the rain off the ground. I'm sorry to rant, but I just feel as though we move to the next thing and we don't talk about the problem that happened yesterday, which is something that probably can be solved if enough smart people put their minds to it.
Well, I'm sure we know that the CCCP have this technology. We know that they can send fighter jets up to seed clouds and make it rain or make it not rain, whatever it needs, like clouds of copper filings or whatever it needs to be. There are ways to do this. There's got to be some sort of, I don't know, sound cannons or something that can disperse precipitation. Or we just develop a waterproof ball. And, you know, it's like, stop being so precious, cricket.
It's got to be the shade cloth. Doesn't it just have to be the shade cloth? I'm using the wrong words. It won't be a shade cloth as such. But, I mean, you've had these emails too from engineers who are like, no. It's not about a roof. It's about something that's held up aloft by drones.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds kind of stupid until you think about it. If all these drones are doing is holding up a giant canopy of sorts. I mean, we could do this, right? I mean, you know, if you're an engineer listening to us today and you've got a solution, tell us about it. And I don't know, we might pass it to our old mate, Geoff Allardyce, who's to know. Give us ideas, give us thoughts, because the roof thing ain't going to happen.
No, the roof's not going to happen, but there's got to be a way. Or, you know, it could be things like, you know, crazy things like starting earlier on days when the weather is fine, which happened at least a couple of times during that match when it was sunny and decent during the morning, but they still don't start till 11 o'clock.
How on earth have they stuffed that up, by the way? So the ECB last year, bowing to pressure, started games earlier. They had the flexibility to start games at 10:30, which they've never built in before. Certainly not until they moved. I mean, cricket did start at 10:45. Then it started at 11, and for historical, silly reasons, it always starts at 11 on the dot, rather than building in flexibility to wind it back. Until last year, for the final couple of test matches, they did give themselves that flexibility. Why was it this week, first test against India, that we couldn't start before 11 o'clock? Why was 11 o'clock sacrosanct again? Did they forget that they fixed this problem 12 months ago? Did they actually forget? Has it come to that?
And equally, the ICC issues with going off for bad light when it's not really that bad, and when you have floodlights, you know, they've got to revise that or have some flexibility, and the kind of things that we've talked about swapping out a pink ball if you need to play under floodlights. Like, I know it's not perfect. I know it doesn't preserve the absolute sanctity of the contest in terms of having the one ball that ages over the course of 80 overs and so on. But you know what? They swap the ball every fucking 2 hours during a test match anyway. Oh, it's gone a bit out of shape. Swap it out for another one. Oh, this one started swinging more. Oh, you know, joy or shame, or someone gets mad. Like, this happens all the time regardless. And if you've got a choice between having no cricket or having some cricket that's maybe a little bit compromised in terms of the perfect evolution of the contest, you're probably still better to get on and play.
Yeah, I think that I mean, obviously I've been advancing that argument for a long time, that you can replace a red for a pink until the close of play. Talking to some experts in the field, apparently the pink ball isn't quite there to that extent yet. But it can be an aspiration. It can be an aspiration. So by that
Still
I mean
better than nothing.
that the older pink ball, it's hard to replicate how an older pink ball looks compared to an older red ball. So less about the new ball, more about the older ball. But nevertheless, that's there. But look, we just got to get resourceful, don't we? We got to get creative, and it didn't look good when they came off at different times this week. And it's a boring topic, but it's an unfortunate one that we have to keep returning to from time to time. I think the easiest one to deal with, not the easiest one, but the most important one to deal with is rain, and how at test venues we can find some solution that involves mitigating the rain that's falling, and I just don't think we should write it off as sort of crazy sort of science fiction. There has to be some way through this.
And I would also ask why, as we've said it before about a million times, why can't an English ground do like a Sri Lankan ground does and cover the entire surface so that you don't have 3 hours waiting for the wet outfield to dry and trying to prep the surface back up. So, look, there are these issues. There are also issues with England's test team more so than India's. Very interesting to hear that Moeen Ali has got the SOS. Sending out an SOS. He's coming back, baby. He wouldn't be coming into the squad if he wasn't coming into the 11. Somehow this remarkable antipathy towards a supremely talented cricketer and presumably towards spin bowling in general is going to shift because, I mean, I don't know what is with Chris Silverwood, but the guy who picked 4 quicks in India and then picked 4 quicks very unsuccessfully against New Zealand and then talks about learning from their failings all the time, still went and picked 4 quicks and no spinner in the first test, and that could have cost him. It ended up being low scoring enough that it didn't, but it might have. That might have been the difference on the last day, not having a spinner, had they been trying to bowl India out without rain. So things are changing quickly in that camp. There's not a lot of cohesiveness with the supposed vision that they set out.
Yeah, Moeen Ali, the love you gave me, nothing else can save me, SOS. I think that this was something that I kind of weirdly anticipated a few days ago on our broadcast. So they're saying, if they can't find room for a spinner, then they need to find a spinner who can bat in the top 7. They've only got one option. It has to be a Moeen Ali. By deduction, it's not good. I feel so desperately sorry for Jack Leach. He bowled really well in India and in Sri Lanka.
In tough circumstances too.
In tough circumstances. No runs on the board, seldom any runs on the board. And there's Jack Leach routinely doing the job, making his contribution, 3 for a 4 for after 3 for a 4 for. And now can't get a game in England and certainly won't play here. So it'll be 4 consecutive home test matches that he's been overlooked for, and then 6 last summer. So 10 test matches in a row in England where they've gone a different way, be it in 2020 when they went with Dom Bess, and then this year where they've gone without altogether. Hearing Joe Root talk before about Moeen, he sort of talked about his confidence at the moment in short form cricket, his capability as a match winner at test level, which is not to be doubted. The fact that Moeen's only played 1 test match in the last 2 years, though, and that was at Chennai, and all the controversy around him coming home after that is a bit of a thing. I don't think it's an absolute lock that he's playing. They still want to see the pitch at Lords before they are definitive around this, and there's other complications in the England 11 around Ollie Pope. Will he be fit to play? He hasn't done a fitness test as yet. Haseeb Hameed as well. Are they going to be reluctant? If Pope's fit and Haseeb Hameed comes in, will they necessarily be willing to make 3 changes? 3 changes to a Test 11, no matter why or how, is a big deal. So that they might be reticent to change it up to that extent.
Conversely, 3 changes to a Test 11 that's not very good could be seen to be beneficial.
It could be seen to be on the front foot. But Haseeb, I reckon, is the most likely to play. Zach Crawley, there's no doubt that he has the ability to be a long-term Test cricketer. Sorry, there is a doubt. I shouldn't be as emphatic as that. He hasn't. It isn't beyond any reasonable doubt that he might just be a county player. But it looks like he's got all what you need to be a long-term player. But he's desperately out of form and out of runs. And Geoff, how often have we said on this program that if a player is battling their ass off, that you are doing them a favour to leave them out of the Test 11, to take them out of the firing line, send him back to domestic cricket, to get the specialised coaching that he needs to build in confidence and maybe be viable to come to Australia later in the year. And in the short term, Haseeb Hameed, 200s for knots earlier in the season, 1 for the County 11 against this Indian bowling attack, including Bumrah and Shami, And Shuttle Ducker played in that match as well, I'm pretty sure. Mohamed Siraj certainly did.
And
He's made runs against this attack 2 weeks ago.
He peeled one off in the 50 over stuff as well. He made a runnable 100 and he was plonking sixes over long on. So, the world absolutely turned on its head. The stats on Crawley where, is he averaged 10 since he made that double 100? But then I also find it curious that people are so keen to get Ollie Pope back in because he's had a run just as bad as Crawley over the last year or so. He's had an absolutely torrid run in terms of his returns.
Yeah, he has. Although, and this is the thing, isn't it? Test matches aren't spreadsheets, are they? I would say, who am I? But I would say that I would have more faith in Ollie Pope making runs for England this week than I would Zach Crawley. Like, my gut says that Ollie Pope looks a more accomplished player across the board at this stage of his career than Zach Crawley. And Zach Crawley looks like he can't make one right now. He looks incredibly timid and nervous, and you can't have that from your number 3. So what England can do is play 3 openers. And the great national debate, well, not national debate, because to be a national debate, you need the whole country talking about cricket, which it isn't. But Dom Sibley, having faced 203 deliveries for 18 and 28 in the first test, does mean that you can build a case either way, can't you? Mm-hmm. If you're a critic of Sibley, I saw Tim Delisle wrote a piece today saying, that messes with the rhythm of a team, having a player who consumes so many balls without being productive. It can stunt momentum. Others will say, well, look, if he's faced 203 deliveries, he's making life easier for those that come after. So an inconclusive performance, I suppose, at Trent Bridge from the right-hander. But he'll keep his spot, that's for sure.
I think it depends greatly on who he's batting with, because when Sibley was batting with Joe Root, that partnership looked fine because Root was looking like $1 million. He was scoring at a clip of, 75 to 80 sort of strike rate, which meant that it didn't matter that Sibley was batting at 10 because they were still, ticking along at 3 and over, and it was enough. It was good enough. It was quick enough. When he doesn't have someone with that level of assurance and confidence at the other end, which is everybody else in the England team, maybe Sam Curran, I suppose, has the kind of confidence in himself, even if he's not as accomplished a player. But aside from that, everybody else is in their shell so much that it makes it very difficult when there's someone else at the other end who isn't going to be able to push on like that. And when you have that top 3 that goes Burns, Sibley, Hamid, if that's the way it works out, that's a pretty slow top 3. I mean, when Burns is the aggressor out of your trio, you're not really 4 to the floor at any point.
I would just balance that out by saying that Hamid's a more aggressive player than the one we might remember from 5 years ago. Like, he does play more fluently now. So I reckon that on better tracks, and look, Lords was a very good track. What was it, 6 weeks ago against New Zealand? That was a very good pitch, great test wicket. I wouldn't be surprised if he does well there if it's hard. It's not raining at the moment. If they get a couple of good days prep into it, and even if they bat second and it's flatter, I wouldn't doubt that Hamid would be a good option there at number 3 and can bat at a much higher tempo than Sibley and maybe even Burns. So, looking forward to seeing how that all plays out in England 11. I suppose that the best thing about the Indian team is we're not really talking about them. They must find a way to get Ashwin in at Lords. I have no idea how they're going to do it. Siraj is such a competitor. Yep. I feel like I want him in the team. Thakur is a very capable swing bowler. He complements, Bumrah and Shami so well, who basically pick themselves. And Jadeja balances them off perfectly. So, the classic good problem to have there.
Yeah, I think, no one will be surprised who's ever listened to the show, but I think you have to go. You have to have Shardul Tucker in the team at the moment because you need that extra batting in England. And if you can go Jadeja 7, Ashwin 8, Tucker 9, you've suddenly got a really capable team going down the order. I think, I love Siraj, but I think he's probably the one who needs to make way if someone's making way. But yeah, it's tough to do given the way he shapes the ball in the air and how useful that could be at Lords. He's not going to be leading the attack with Bumrah and Shami there, but he's the kind of guy who can take 2 very useful wickets right when you need them. So yeah, it's a tough call.
Yeah, it's extremely rare that Kohli plays the same 11 in 2 consecutive test matches as well. Like, he loves rotating it around. He never lets an opposing team settle. So, looking forward to when the team sheets are exchanged at Lords on Thursday morning. I'll be back broadcasting that test on SCN if you're in Australia or New Zealand. All through the night, I can keep you company.
All through the night. Okay. I think it's time to take a deep breath, and then go to John Doyle.